Desde el hondo criso de la patria se levanta el clamor popular, ya se anuncia la nueva alborada, todo Chile comienza a cantar, recordando el soldado valiente, cuyo ejemplo se hiciera inmortal. Enfrentemos primero la muerte, traicionar a la patria más. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer. Campesinos, soldados y obreros, la mujer de la patria también, estudiantes, empleados, mineros, cumpliremos con nuestro deber, sembraremos la tierra de gloria, socialista será el porvenir, todos juntos haremos la historia, a cumplir, a cumplir, a cumplir. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer.
Okay, yeah, I gotta let that play all the way to the end. And by the way, the chorus of that song is "A thousand chains we must break, and we will triumph over fascism." Basically, we will destroy fascism, and it's sort of tangential to what I'm talking about. But anyway, before I get into that, I wanted to make sure that all of these pages of the Peace Island book about invasive species is all the proper size. Yeah, you'd think that I would have it set up like an action that would automatically do this, but I don't know. Probably I could do that directly in design, but now you may be wondering who this guy Curtis Yarvin is, and trust me, if you've not heard of him, I can understand why, because his ideas are absolute just pig swill, but the reason that he's significant, and we really didn't understand this until our second dalliance with fascism here, is that apparently the powers behind the second Trump administration, such as Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and such, have chosen J.D. Vance as the vice president because they believe that one way or another that he will eventually become president, maybe through either Hitler becoming ill and having to surrender the presidency, or somehow they'll be able to somehow get him elected as the next president after, if we should be so lucky as to have a true multi-party election. And maybe that's why they think they can get him elected, because maybe by then we will not have a multi-party election. Now, you've probably seen this little piece of video, talking about Peter Thiel saying, I believe that democracy is no longer compatible with the concept of freedom. That idea and many other ideas that these kind of guys talk about. And again, pig swill comes from a culture that I actually, it comes from a guy by the name of this, basically I mentioned him in this Curtis Yarvin. And you'll be forgiven again for not really paying attention, because really everything he says is absolute just bollocks. But for some reason, again, the most powerful people in the world believe in him. And one of those is, basically, I don't think that J.D. Vance so much believes in Curtis Yarvin. I don't think J.D. Vance believes in anything. I mean, remember that he was the guy that was like, he's the American Hitler, anybody who votes for him is an idiot, etc., etc. Now he's gone 100%. Again, that just proves that he has no real principles. But we're going to bring him up here, this guy. And yeah, he started like, started wearing the leather jacket here and cut his hair short so he looks a little bit more like David Cronenberg, a little bit more cool. But no, this is basically, whenever you think of this guy, this is the person you have to think of. Let me see, open image. And now here's the thing. I don't want to really judge anybody by their looks. Jean-Paul Sartre had just absolute strabismus. And I've known, you cannot judge intelligence by how they look. However, this guy is about 2 years younger than I. And he comes right out of Silicon Valley. In fact, he reminds me of one of the characters in this book by Norman Spinrad. It's called Pictures at 11. I highly recommend reading this. It's a very good, just sort of, it's almost written seriously like the screenplay for like a great movie, and he may have written that. But this is a guy that grew up in Silicon Valley about the same time that I was born, 1972, 1973. And now, I didn't grow up in Silicon Valley, but I spent a couple of years there about the same time that this guy really got hot in the 90s. He was a very, very prolific blogger because, as you can see here, he was obviously not very popular with women. And by the way, I'm saying that, heaven knows I'm not popular with women at all, but you could tell. So he was a very popular blogger back then. And here, I lived in the Silicon Valley area for about a year and a half back in the day. And, I got to know the culture out there. And just like the character in Pictures at 11, Curtis Yarvin grew up, technically, basically knowing computers as his, as like the back of his hand since he was born, with very liberal parents. And of course, growing up in California and Silicon Valley, near San Francisco, the only way to rebel was to become right-wing. Really. And I totally get that. I had liberal parents, and at one time I was like, oh no, this, I dallied with, I bought an Ayn Rand novel once. I'll totally admit it, but it was Anthem, which I think is Ayn Rand's only good novel. But let's not get off of where we're talking about. What we're talking about here. This just wonderful example of humanity, who with a fantastic dress sense and great self-image there. And by the way, there is a fantastic video of him where literally he just starts off, "I'm an intellectual." Any person who starts off, just boys and girls out there, any person out there who says that, like, I'm an intellectual as a way of introduction, run as far away as you can in the opposite direction. Hi. I'm hoping that my audio is coming through. But anyway, I knew guys like this back during my time in Silicon Valley. These were gooners that basically just sat, and they were very big on Usenets at the time, which were very early forums at that day. And now, I don't think they're even on Reddit. But anyway, the early forums and such. And these were the days where, I mean, when you'd meet somebody in Silicon Valley in Ayn Rand, they literally have the full cult thing. They would stand and sit in a certain way. They would look down at you. Because, understand, people like this individual thought that they were at the cutting edge. They were the people that were ushering in the new generation. They were of technology and society. They were the people who knew how to get things done. Now, part of Yarvin's pitch is, I come from a place where we break things and move fast, and where success is paramount, etc., etc. 90, I think 90, it's either 94 or 96% of all Silicon Valley IT firms go out of business. Silicon Valley is, don't get me wrong, they have given us great things, but they are also the place where just things go to die. Now, if anybody, such as this individual, considers Silicon Valley as a place we need to emulate on a societal level to get things done, anybody, they don't know what they're talking about. They are, again, like I said, they're children. They have no concept of what they're talking about, but we're going to go in a little bit deeper. Now, I am not, here's the thing, is I have a life, and I don't live in a shitty place like Silicon Valley. No offense to those guys who live in Silicon Valley. I lived there, again, back in the day. I can't imagine how absolutely horrible it's probably 10 times worse now. I mean, honest to God, worst public transit system. Anyway, I won't go on to that. Yeah, I've shit on Silicon Valley enough. Let's move on to this. Now, at this point, you may be going, okay, so this guy is, a gooner on, the early newsnets. Why should we pay attention to Greaseball I don't know. He to me, God, he looks like a guy that would wash his feet in the office toilets. But that's actually what Steve Jobs did. And he's another, again, I mean, just look into Steve Jobs. He could still be with us, but he thought fruit juice cured cancer. Again, the kind of person that Curtis Yarvin would say, oh, Steve Jobs, absolutely, put him in charge. A guy who believed that fruit juice caused cancer. Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's just go. I was talking about Silicon Valley, and yeah, I've not gone because I have a life, and I live in a good place. I can't say that I've read much of this guy's stuff. And the reason why I think that he is, again, significant, and I'll show you again, is let's go to YouTube. By the way, I'm so looking forward to seeing how long Johnny Somali goes to jail. I mean, but you can see here, he has done interviews with the New York Times. He is literally, he is the philosopher king of this new generation of oligarchs. So you have to understand, like it or not, this weirdo is the philosophical mind behind what is going on right now. So, and Pelletier, etc., etc. I think he works for them now. I'm not completely sure. Now here is. Well, I should continue working. Sorry. As much as I would love to just continue looking at that face. Here's the problem. I have watched enough of his crappy, interviews. And again, when you're dealing with somebody who starts off his introduction with, I'm an intellectual. Oh my God, you gotta really keep your gorge down. while listening to the rest of whatever flops out of their mouth. Because even Ayn Rand wasn't that obnoxious. Now, one of the things that these guys in Silicon Valley still hold really true to is the dictum: move fast and break things. Because, of course, if we break things and we accelerate and we go really fast, look up accelerationism. Phil Leon, a guy, let's go to, get this ugly MFer. Let's go to YouTube, Phil Leon, accelerationism. Yeah, this is a very good video, a very good introduction to everything that these guys, they believe, yes, they come from the way they have been able to justify that 96% failure rate from the model that they consider sacred is to say that, yes, even if we get everything wrong and things collapse, something better will rise out of it. That's insanity. And very close. I have recently, I consider myself a very good student of art history, but I've only recently discovered that the Futurist art school in Italy was very much in favor of fascism. Even though they were a very avant-garde, progressive art movement, their motto was move, 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 move for the sake of moving. Just because everything before was slow, and we just by moving we'll be able to discover new frontiers and do things. And we all know how great that found. And by the way, let's just, this always has to be shown. I never pass up a chance. Trigger warning. Mussolini at Texaco. Trigger warning, this is going to be a very violent image, but this has to always be shown when these people always reference, this insane move, move fast and break things, and democracy is too slow, and we're going to get around to that because that is straight up Curtis Yarvin's main thesis. But we're going to take a look at this. So this is where the whole move fast and break things thing led to. You can see here's Benito Mussolini right here. Here's his mistress, and here's his driver. I think I don't know whether his wife was with them. I forget the other two. It doesn't matter, but suffice it to say that these guys they hung there for several days until the stench. The people who lived, in these apartment buildings, they couldn't sleep at night. So anyway. We're dealing with, again, an individual. Let's just go back here. This guy who's coming from a place where he considers a business practice that is 96% or 94% unsuccessful. And understand, I think currently that is way, typically back in the day, 50% of new businesses went out of, 50% of small businesses died within the first year. I don't know whether the stats are the same, but understand Silicon Valley has a far higher failure rate. But you have a guy here who considers that failure rate to be the ideal, and also holds the same philosophy of move fast, accelerate, break things, that leads to, again, let's bring this up. That leads to this. So you got 97% business failure married with a political, with an essentially a political philosophy that leads to this. Now, again, this is a guy that Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, all these people absolutely adore. They absolutely adore this guy. They consider him, again, the prophet of the new age. Now, let's go to our stuff. I need to bring all those. And I need to make a new. Great. Oh yeah. P-I-S. Piss, almost. Oh, it's Peace Island invasive species, as you probably saw as I was doing it. Really. Speak book pages. So now you may be wondering, why do these tech bros and everybody consider, a mix between fascism and really horrible business practices to be ideal? And why does Peter Thiel think democracy is no longer compatible with democracy? I'm sorry, no, freedom is no longer compatible with democracy. Very sorry. I've been a long time working. Very sorry. But we need to go to, let's see. These all in. Create a book and apply them to that. And then we got to place the book in a couple of interiors. I mean, I'm thinking it would probably be in every building, considering it's like such an important thing. But let's go here. We need to make sure. Now, I'm pretty sure there's some people who'd be watching this and they're going, well, the guy may have some really crazy ideas, but why does that make him... What did I call him? I'm going to have to go to my YouTube channel and look at it. I think I called it... I'm just going to go to live. A dumbass child. I did say dumbass. Let's just see here. Yeah. Is a childish moron. Childish. Okay. This, I can only go into this without, at the risk of sounding almost as pretentious as Yarvin himself, but my references are better than his. Because again, he references, he considers fascism and monarchism and accelerationism to be superior to what we have now. Why? Because again, he looked like this, and he looked like this in high school, and he thought that if everything was different, and the world was put in the way that I imagine it, then people like me, the girls, will. That's essentially it, and it's sad. Why do I say that he's a child? It's because he basically he has explicitly stated that his ideal form of government is monarchy. He considers it superior to democracy because he believes that the peasants always have the ability, if things get too bad, to overthrow the monarch. This is where I think that Curtis Yarvin may not be of my generation. Because when I went to high school, and maybe he was his parents were like very, very progressive, and that's why he rebelled and became the weird guy that he is. I'm wondering if he learned anything about history. And I will go back to this. I need to step away. I will be back in a moment, and I'm just gonna leave a little note for myself so I so I remember where I was. Okay, so why monarchy and sucks, and where Curtis Yarvin imagines himself in said monarchy. I'll be back in a moment. And by the way, I hate to be mentioning again, this guy's apparent inability to get many friends in high school is, part of the sickness that is inside of that little empty space up here. Um, but there's a great intersectionality between the philosophy behind this guy's quote unquote philosophy and the incel thing. That there's a great deal of intersectionality between the two, and it needs to be just mentioned there. I mean, really, these people just say, hey, no, we're not going to. I'm not going to get off on a tangent on there. So anyway, number one, you got to understand. Curtis Yarvin does not imagine himself as the leader of said country. What he wants, and what Peter Thiel wants, and the rest of that bunch want, is they want a populace that is what so very sorry. Let me rewind a bit. He wants to be an advisor to the king. He wants to be one of the people that's in the background. Every one of the people who believe in neo monarchism, and that's been something that's been around since, forever. People, even in the United States, people think you can go back, and even in the 1800s, there were people that were, publishing pamphlets about how we should return to a monarchy. But again, Peter Thiel and all those people, they don't believe that they can, be an adequate king because they are far too smart. What they want is a dumb person that's going to be very popular with the people. And for some reason, they've really chosen, J.D. Vance. Let's just take a picture of just. For some reason, they thought this, escapee from the Handmaid's Tale, this absolute hypocrite, this guy who shows that he absolutely has no principles, is the guy that's going to be able to be the charismatic front for their new monarchism. And here's the thing. I understand why, again, kids who can't, again, those kids of that era were gooning and sitting around on their computers thinking, if I were in charge of the world, everything would be so much greater. That's what I used to think too when I was about, 21, 22, and I was living in Silicon Valley. I was like, oh yeah, I'm at the forefront, and I figured everything out. All these old people, my God. But here's the thing. I did something that I don't think, I know something that Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin and all the rest of this brain trust that's trying to bring this fascism to this country, this new monarchism. They have never read back our founding fathers here in the United States. They were not perfect, but they were. If you read their letters that they sent to each other, the way they go into incredibly esoteric detail about how power without virtue is empire, and they say, oh yes, I had that opinion too, but then I read this philosopher in the original Greek, and then I realized what they were really saying. If you asked all these, J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel and Curtis Yarvin, they go, oh, these guys, yeah, all that intelligence stuff, all that stuff, that was grand in those old days. They didn't understand this new, great, dynamic world we live in. No. Again, they did not read the absolute depth of thought. And I will say, I'm the first to say that the United States Constitution is not perfect, and our country is not perfect. We have, like our Constitution says, in pursuit of a more perfect union, which is, an impossibility because something has to be perfect, otherwise it's not perfect. But again, we're always going to a more perfect union. We're never going to be perfect. Just as the Soviet Union was like, we're not communists, but we're working toward it. That is what we are working toward as a country. These freaking guys, J.D. Vance, the people behind J.D. Vance, in particular, again, this guy, they don't understand that the people that wrote our Constitution sat around for weeks drinking and talking about what kind of government, and they drank a lot, talking about what government they had. When you look at the daily liquor bill for the Constitutional Congress here in the United States, it's absolutely astounding the amount of liquor. These guys were drunk all the way through. But here's the thing. Anyway, take it for what it is. But I think they did a pretty good job. And I think that their arguments against monarchism, and again, I can't go into them in detail because I just look them up for yourselves. The open correspondence between Jefferson and his contemporaries is all open to the public. You can read it. It's hopefully still in the Library of Congress, but you should. And you should realize that this person is just coming in and trying to really sell the idea that people 225 years ago considered and threw in the shit can. But for some reason, because he came out of that hotbed of business failure and expansive ideas, there's a huge psychedelic culture there, by the way, as well. He somehow thinks that he is now a grand intellectual bringing something new to the table. And you could go again. We could ignore this guy. And by the way, I need to bring the book. What good is he? What good? Again, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, all these people. And the guys that were in Palantir. And basically, everybody who's evil considers him like the font of the new enlightenment. And again, when you realize that this guy is just coming out of the worst possible place, offering the worst possible accelerationist philosophy, that's all in the pursuit of imposing something that our founding fathers and mothers in this country, and I guarantee you, by the way, those people corresponded with their wives or their mistresses during the. I mean, I guarantee you, I guarantee you, the prostitutes were doing a healthy business during the Constitutional Congress. It is what it is. Again, our founding, women of the night as well. Kudos to you, gals. That they had, and they, for some reason, again, these multi-billion. Well, no, the reason that they believe that this is great is because, of course, monarchy is fantastic. Not so much for the king that can be overthrown, but for the quislings underneath that can grab all they can and disappear into the woodwork, or somehow wheedle their way into the next administration. And again, if you read the original letters between our founding fathers and mothers, prostitutes, go gals, and by the way, they were. Let's not go into that. I don't mean to be disrespectful. They discussed all of this stuff in levels of detail and reference that this moronic child could not even wrap his brain around if he took a triple dose of Adderall. And and they really are behind it because they believe that it's more beneficial to them, because we are beyond peak capitalism now. I mean, what was it? Peak capitalism and time. We're basically at that point now. I mean, honest to goodness, the stuff that's going on right now. As far as, anyway, I don't want to get into everything that's going on right now, because when you get into the details, you get lost in the woods. You have to keep your head clear. That's I've been doing that since, again, November, when you again as a country shat the bed, did something. So anyway, I'm going to do this endless book. Make sure that this is the right kind. So, yeah, I could do this. No, I want one with fewer pages because I don't want to have to go through all of it. I want Frack. There we go. Because that is a very small number of pages. I could do that. So I'm going to go. And I'm just gonna, no, I have to name this. I'm not gonna use a photo tangent, but endless book frick. It's gonna be endless book. In faces spec. Space. And I had to say this. I had to just mention something about it because, the whole Horton here's a who thing. And every time I've seen this guy, I'm an intellectual. Prove it. How many languages do you speak? Do you have anything beyond accelerationism, fascism, and a pale excuse for why we should go back to a monarchist system that we rejected rightfully hundreds and hundreds of years, 200 years ago. Over 200 years ago now. Almost 250 years ago. All of a sudden we're supposed to go back to that? Because this guy, again, thinks that if somehow he's quizzling to J.D. Vance, the new emperor. Somehow he'll become, I mean, he'll be given all the recognition that he deserves. I mean, look at this guy. I mean, and you don't even have to look at him here in that one image. Go to look at his interviews if you can stand it. Listen to the absolute nonsense that he spouts. And I mean, whenever I see that video where it just starts off, I'm an intellectual. Good God Almighty. Honest to goodness. And I'm just, I mean, really, going to the freaking cover. There's this, again, like I said, the overlap between, you know, this sort of weird neo-monarchist garbage in the incel community. What really gets me about this is the whole incel, you know, loneliness epidemic, is that it seems, well, no, I know why. It seems like every boy, everybody with the XY chromosomes, the two XY, they think they're the first generation that can't get laid. And oh my God, get over yourselves, kids. Get over yourselves. Also, put down your cell phone, make yourself interesting. That's, I mean, really, that's a solution, little incels. What you got to do, you just got to make yourself interesting. And yes, that means you may, oh my goodness. Again, I can't even go into it. I can't talk to these incel people because they are just so screwed in the head. I mean, I try. I mean, my personal solution is just legalize prostitution. I mean, there are some people who enjoy, and on both genders, and that way they can just do it and get it over with. And that way they can discover that is not the be all and end all of life. And once that happens, they'll still be sitting at home and realizing I'm still a boring person and nobody likes me. Maybe, and that's a part. That's the lesson you gotta learn, guys. Okay. I mean, instead of spending all your time on an incel forum, pick up a pencil and draw something, or learn a new language, or read a book. Yes, you feel lonely right now, but trust me, once you become more interesting and a little bit more worldly and spend a little less time feeling sorry for yourself, you'll discover that most of the loneliness and incel involuntary part of that celibacy that you feel is actually stuff that you did. And I could talk from experience, okay? Anyway. I mean, you can't just sit there and go, oh, no, girls don't like me. Oh goodness gracious. No. It's either a reason or literally you shut yourself off for it. Come on. You don't know what it's like. You're too old. Oh, screw you, God. Screw you forever. But anyway, I just had to say something about this because really, as an American, as a United States citizen, because really, United States of America is not the only part of, America. Still, one of those old-fashioned people who consider South and Central America and Canada part of America, because, well, it is. But apparently now America is all us, which I think is unfair to everybody else in, the Americas. I mean, I had a roommate who was Mexican a couple of years back when I lived in New Jersey, and I mean, considered him You know, I'm just going to black this out. I mean, if anything is said about, you know, our sinking into fascism in the United States, it is a uniquely lazy method of sinking into fascism. I mean, I understand Donald Trump didn't want the presidency again. He just wanted to stay out of jail. We're here because the guy was running because he wanted to stay out of jail. And now we have a fascist government because a lot of people couldn't bring themselves to vote. And it sucks. But you know, I just know I can't feel down or because I just know from history that these sort of things and people like this, festering boils like this guy and Donald Trump unfortunately show up throughout humanity's history. In fact, I'm not a fan of the new Foundation series on television. I forget which, you know, pay-per-view series network is doing it. Maybe Apple TV. But the original book, understand, there's this character called the Mule who comes along, and that's a Donald Trump. And what Donald Trump is, and what this guy is, and what they all aspire to be, is wreckers. Because they believe that somehow, after they wreck everything, no matter the cause, whatever, something better will rise up afterwards. And all of a sudden, women will like them. Straight up, that's it. And it's really sad. That, I mean, when historians write about how the United States sank into fascism, it's just going to be the most hilarious thing for generations in the future and other countries to read. Because, I mean, Germany could go, ha! We were going into economics. I mean, we were starving to death and our currency was worth less than human feces. We went to fascism. Italy was like, we've been humiliated for hundreds of years. We voted for him because he had blood on his ear because he got hit by the glass from his teleprompter, and he's going to make America great again. I mean, honest to goodness, history is not going to look good on. Everybody has said history is just not going to look good on this time in the United States, and I mean, I'm pretty sure that right now Europe is going through a correction to this. I think again this dalliance is going to be defeated again. My big fear, though, and I'm just going to say, is that if the Democrats nominate Pete Buttigieg, they are going to give away the White House in 2028. Pete Buttigieg. There's a great series on YouTube. Let me just get this over. Oh, dang it. Sorry. Skip intro. He's been doing these very good hour-long takedowns of the West Wing and how we on the Democratic, I mean, it's very hard to sum up in a very short number of phrases. But the Democratic Party has fallen into this really bad habit of just going, vote for us because we're better than the other guys. And just take that on level. Pete Buttigieg is that. He is the living epitome of vote for me because the other side is worse. Pete Buttigieg is a neoliberal. He has serious problems with black folks. He just does. And he reminds me, anybody who's read this comic book called Transmetropolitan, and I keep on just showing you stuff, but this is a great comic book. Please smile. He reminds me of the Smiler. He's his character from Transmetropolitan, the comic book. He's a heartless, soulless, empty husk that believes that he's running for president because he believes he should be. And if the Democratic Party nominates him, there's this really great phrase that I've heard recently, and I think, if I remember correctly, it's called assumption politics. The Democratic Party and the left in general has a very big problem. They assume too much about the United States of America. Sometimes it pays off, but most of the time it doesn't. They're going to nominate, if they nominate Pete Buttigieg, they're going to put it out there, we think America is ready for a gay president. I personally think we are. I couldn't give a crap who they sleep with or what they do in bed. I really don't. But the majority of America, rightly or wrongly, and I think wrongly, does not share that idea, the ideal with me, that ambivalence. And if the Democrats are going to run this, again, they're going to shove a smiling neoliberal specialist into an electorate that really hates specialists. So, really, I have to put that out there in addition to everything else. If any Democrats are listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, Pete Buttigieg, that's what we need. No, stop it. Where's my rolled up newspaper? Smack you with a book. No. And can I just say, we just have to bring this up. And really, after this, I'm going to go back to my books. Well, actually, I see that people have been chatting over here. Maybe I should. J.D. Vance thinks he's like, oh yeah, no, not J.D. Vance. Sorry, Buttigieg. Pete Boot. Yeah, there we go. Lately, he's grown himself a beard. And to me, he looks like, like over here, he looks like a Temu version of the commander from The Handmaid's Tale. He looks like he's trying to be something. And it's not a good thing that he's trying to be. And the Democratic Party, this is another thing I'm going to throw out there. I have to step away for a minute before I go back and I'm going to just talk to anybody who's talked in the chat. The Democratic Party, Bill Burr brought this up. We can talk as much as we want about the Republican Party, but in 2016, we wanted Bernie. The party bosses got together and said, no, you're getting Hillary. In 2020, we wanted Bernie. We got Joe Biden. The people up above said, no, you're getting Joe Biden. And in 2020, we could have had an open convention. But no, the people up above said, no, we're going to give you Kamala Harris. And by the way, I didn't have a problem with Kamala Harris for the most part. But still, we in the Democratic Party have not had a choice in our party's nominee since 2012. And that's sad. And I think maybe that's a reason why some people just can't bring themselves. I will step away for a minute, and after that, I'm going to bring my book. Spec. And by the way, that should have a metallic. A black metallic. in spec. There we go. Scale. We have bleed. It looks like. Oh, I see what happened. God, what? Okay, don't know why it's doing that. But then we go. Okay, that's the problem that I had there. And I mean, it's already part of, like, I understand, part of the culture, the bro culture to go, oh yeah, fat, oh yeah, democracy and stuff. That's boomer stuff. Yeah. Right. And by the way, I'm adding this book because we have added actually a lot of interactive fauna and flora to the game. This last update, or the update that's coming up on Sunday, and we wanted to have a book so people would understand, the stuff that's. But anyway, I understand that some people are like tuning in, going, "Isn't this guy isn't talking about game? He's talking about a stupid idiot libertarian moron." Well, I don't know. I just felt like, dang it, I needed to talk about it because it was bothering me. And yeah, and by the way, I mean, this guy, straight up, let's just look at this guy. When he was asked about the people that would not be, say, for example, the handicapped, or people with disabilities, or people that were not born to the monarch standard, he said reactor shielding. And again, this is the mind that is behind that Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance and all those people think is an absolute genius. So anyway, I'm going to come back, and if anybody's still chatting and still watching, I'm going to respond to those. But I need to go and grab myself a bite of something because I don't want to be chomping right in front of the camera. But again, I mean, the one thing, I mean, it does not matter what, I mean, how many powerful people consider, Curtis Yarvin to be a, an absolute genius because they're wrong. And there, again, let's just go back to the only way. Again, this is the only way that Curtis Yarvin's kind of thinking ends. And I've shown this so many times because it's so important to remember. The people, Curtis Yarvin, and the people, and Peter, they believe in the same philosophy that leads to this. They can wrap it in modernism. They could do, but it's the same garbage, and it never ever ends well. And the one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that they seem to believe that they have all the power now. And they are going absolutely nuts and just exposing themselves for what they are. And the old phrase, give them enough rope to hang themselves, they are definitely running away with that rope. And again, it's going to suck. No doubt about it, it's going to suck. But these sort of things, they never, ever, ever last. They never do. They are unattainable. Fascism is an untenable system. If you look at any modern day monarchy in which the monarch has any power, you're left with countries like Saudi Arabia and well, look them up. Basically, because those are the only countries that still have those sort of monarchs. A few Middle Eastern, despotisms, quite frankly, because that's what Saudi Arabia is. And I think people should be concerned that that for some reason our government right now is like seized by these kind of people. And it will fail. It always has failed, and it will fail again. Monarchy does not work in a modern context. It just simply does not. And they think that they can create, it'll be a techno monarchy. It'll be, trust me, because we'll be in charge and we're smart. We're smarter than thou. No. They're just rehashing the same old arguments that were settled during the Constitutional Congress by people that were far older and far drunker than them. So, anyway, I'm going to spend the rest of my time here just placing these. Yeah, I got to create the book pages, put those in. I've talked mostly about politics here, but anyway, let me see here. Oh, hi, Chiefly. Yeah, Buttigieg, Jon Stewart. Yeah, Buttigieg has been setting himself up as sort of like the attack dog of the Democrats. And yes, he's very, very good on Fox. When he goes on Fox News and he's able to just like, I totally own them and whatever. But this is another case of sending a specialist into an electorate that hates specialists. Politics in the United States is just really screwy. I mean, this is the last thing I'm going to go into before I actually sign off and do all the boring work that I said I was going to do here. For a lot of years, I mean, ever since I started following politics when I was very young, I'm just going to bring my ugly mug up here. Goodness gracious, the lighting in here sucks. I'm dark. But ever since, ever since I was 15 years old, I had this real big fascination with politics. I thought it was like, the science of the possible, and et cetera, et cetera. And I had a chance to go to Washington, D.C., George Washington University. I was an invited speaker there a couple of times. Long story. But when I got there, I just realized there's absolutely no chance of any change happening. And it's really sad. at least through conventional means. And one thing I will always go back to is those people who made Bernie Sanders' peaceful revolution impossible made Donald Trump's fascism inevitable. To borrow a phrase from JFK. We could have avoided this. Because politics in this country is broken. It totally is. I mean, again, the Democratic Party, like I said, hasn't given its own voters a choice in who it nominates in what now? 12 years. And when I was at a Bernie Sanders rally, there on both sides there were two elderly couples, and they were talking past me, and I was just on my phone taking pictures. They were both Reagan voters, but they were interested in what Bernie Sanders had to say. I guarantee you those people never went to a Hillary Clinton rally. The Democratic Party very much could have prevented this. And I mean, I understand, yes, we do need a woman president, and yes, she did. She was absolutely excellent at everything that she did. But on top of everything else, on top of the sexism that absolutely was contributing to it, Americans don't like somebody that was groomed for the presidency. Which was something that Hillary Clinton was. She went for, step by step. She did every job in Washington. Yes, she did them well, and she worked for those jobs. But the thing is I couldn't get. I mean, as somebody who watched politics for over 25 years, I could not get over the sense that this is somebody that is being groomed and going to be handed to us. And same thing with Pete Buttigieg. Obama basically said he's a future of the Democratic Party back, in 2010, I think. And he's another guy doing his job pretty dang well and everything, but I just get the impression we're going to be presented with just the smiler, a guy, an empty, vapid guy, a neoliberal J.D. Vance. And geez, at that point, I think I will move to another country. Because in either situation, if we want, I mean, really, yes, I can say, oh yeah, Buttigieg will definitely be better than another Republican administration. Ask me how? Well, they'll say, "Oh, he'll rescind all of those tax cuts. Has to get through Congress." The Republicans and some Democrats will call any reversal of the Trump big beautiful bill as the biggest tax increase in American history. Bank on it. That's what's going to happen. So it's not going to be. And what Pete Buttigieg is going to do is he's going to go, to save Social Security, we have to cut it back. We have to add means testing to it. Okay, and that is something that, again, the West Wing did so many times, tried to preach this gospel. Democrats have to betray the programs that work, that they created, that have worked and always have worked and still work. They have to sabotage them in order to keep them alive. And anyway, I'm going to go work on this book, guys. Anyway, and gals. Hi. Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about Hillary. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's another thing that people on the assumption politics. I kept on telling people when Hillary was running, you do not understand. The Republican Party has had a nonstop Hillary Clinton hate machine going for the last 30 years. Do you think, I mean, it's even I, as a lifelong Democrat, I mean, I've heard all their art. I mean, she was unliked because, again, a 30-year record of invective against her. Um, yeah, she would have been another neoliberal Democrat. Uh, but again, I hate to fall back, but better than Trump. You can't tell me better than Trump the first. And definitely, we have been on a better path than Biden the first. And anyway, uh, but here's my fears. I think again in 2028, Buttigieg is going to burst out from the first. He's going to take Iowa. He's going to, like he did last time. He's going to barnstorm it. And he's going to totally take the first caucus. New Hampshire is going to be a little bit more troublesome for him, but I think in the end he's got the whole establishment behind him, and anybody that goes against him, they're just going to. I mean, we can come. Means testing is a problem with the black community. All these other problems, and you know what the Democratic establishment is going to say? Oh well, we think they're just going to ignore our complaints, and they're going to. We think the United States is ready to elect a gay president. Why are you bringing these minor issues up? These minor issues that are at the heart of the Democratic Party's identity. And again, if that happens in 2028, hopefully by then, Peace Island will have shipped it, and it's done. And I don't know. I've been thinking Botswana looks pretty nice. Hopefully, it's still nice in 2028. Anyway, talk to you guys later. And I'm sorry I didn't work too much on the game, but really the biggest thing is I wanted to talk about that. Kurt, I cannot believe. Again, there's that meme. We when we thought fascism would come to the United States, we thought it would come this way, but it's become in the most ridiculous outfit, in the most incompetent guys with the most shitty ideas that have been disproven and time again, and they're just trying it again. I mean, I myself thought, when fascism comes to the United States, we're going to try it in a sexy American way. We're not going to be that. No, it's the same garbage. Anti-Semitism, anti-gay, trans wasn't so much of an issue back in the 40s. But, really, it's just hate the minority, hate the left, blame the left for everything, etc. And just don't offer any good solutions other than shuffling money upward. Which does lead to a growing economy, but only for a short while. It's the equivalent of, if you have a fire and you throw gasoline on it, yeah, it'll provide warmth. But anyway. And the reason by the way, I'm working in, like I said, I talk a lot about politics here when I'm a game developer. And the reason I got into game development is because really, like I said, I had a chance. I went to Washington, D.C., and I talked to these people. I was at George Washington University, at JFK School of Government, and the Institute of Policy and Democracy for the Internet. I was an invited speaker there twice. And these people were just such robots. I just could... after that, I could not wait to get out of politics. As soon as I could exit, I thought about doing a comic book again. Because if you don't know, let me just show you. Back in drawing. Yeah, I used to be an aspiring illustrator, cartoonist. You can see here. But I had an idea, and I wanted to work with this guy, and he was kind of crazy, and I never heard from him anyway. And I couldn't do it by myself. And, back then I was sort of just ADD, and I hadn't been properly medicated for it. So, anyway, I illustrated a couple of Franz Kafka stories. But it was like, ever since I was 15, I was like, I want to work in politics. And now I had been there twice. And I realized how pointless it was. Been there in Washington, D.C., in the forge at JFK School of Government where the leaders of tomorrow were forged, etc. And you realize it's no job. It's just a job like any other. It's a workplace like any other. And it's full of the same garbage. And, So I tried to get into. I thought about doing a comic book. Didn't do that. Then I moved up here to Maine, and I tried writing a novel, but I'm not a good narrative writer. I got better. Over the course of developing Peace Island, I got better at it because I had to write 12 books for the game. Ha! Yeah, all the books in the game are readable from beginning to end. Anyway, I couldn't get very. So I was. I don't know. The last thing was like I had two choices. Either I could start a video game company or I could start a kimchi company because I really like kimchi and I like cooking. And I don't know. I wound up. I wound up with this. Because really, oh my God, my face was behind there. I didn't show you the pictures. By the way, I'm sorry. Yeah, here are the pictures. These are the pictures I drew back in the day. Let's see. Yeah, here. Sorry, my face is over it. Yeah, I used to draw a lot of stuff back in the day. You can just look it up. I did concept art for an old game called Inherit the Earth that was done by the Dreamers Guild back in the 1991, 1992, I think. Anyway, but anyway, that why did I go off on that tangent? Because I'm old and I'm Grandpa Eric. You know what? I need to go feed our cats. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, Curtis Yarvin is a jackass.